Well, welcome. Since our senior forum has been delayed due to COVID-19, we thought we would bring it to you. And in April, we were going to have a topic on elder law. And so I talked here to Tim Lervick, and he decided he would come over and graciously and join us for some what we think would have been your questions. So accept us for what we've got here. So, Tim, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Pastor Julie. Thanks for having me. I am with the Crowley Fleck Attorney Law Firm here in Bismarck. We have offices in Bismarck, Williston, 6 locations in Montana, and 3 in Wyoming, so a fairly large firm. And I have been practicing law for a little over 42 years, and most of that time spending it with estate planning and elder law issues.
All right. So what is elder law?
Simply helping senior citizens with legal issues such as estate planning, Medicare, Medicaid issues, retirement plans, that type of thing.
Okay, fantastic. So, I think one of our, like I was telling you, one of our purposes here is to take away some of the mystery and fear of things that we have to deal with. And I think one of those things people fear is having a will or drafting a will. So what would you say is the purpose and reasons and the benefits of having a will?
Well, I guess simply, and I think most people know this, but it's worth mentioning, as a will is just nothing more than a document that people write telling directing where they want their property to go upon their death, and then also naming a personal representative. Other terms would be executor or administrator of the estate to follow the directions in the will, transferring property, paying final bills, and transferring property as the will directs.
Yeah.
And I guess one other thing is that people maybe don't realize this, but everyone has a will. If they don't do their own, it's a will that the state has made up in state law. If you don't have a will, the state law directs where your property goes, depending on your situation and who your heirs are.
Mm-hmm. Does a will have to be secret until after your death?
No.
No.
No, it doesn't. Some people will share it with their family. Others will say, no, they don't need to know the details. The most important thing is for someone to know where it's at, so that there's not a big search and looking for something and not being able to find it.
Not in a safety deposit box unless you have the key, right?
Well, actually, you can. It's a good idea to keep it in a safety deposit box, because usually banks will allow you to go in and retrieve the will, not anything else, until someone has been appointed to administer the estate as a personal representative. But they'll at least let you go take the will out and use that so you can get power from the court to act as personal representative.
And also let your family know who your lawyer is so that you can you have at least hunt. What was the movie Florida? The one where the woman had her briefcase that had all her stuff and she brought it around with her all the time. And so in the event of her death, it was all there. I mean, that's something families should do, have a file of.
Well, a file or, again, something where someone knows where they can find those documents, whether it be kept in the attorney's file or, with family members or, just so they can be located. I mean, that's true for insurance policies, titles to your property, your will, etc.
Okay. Now, another thing we hear about is a trust that people use. What's a trust? Again, what's the advantages, disadvantages? What's the definition of a trust?
What a trust is an arrangement where one person is responsible for taking care of someone else's property on their behalf. And when I say one person and someone else, it can all be the same person. I mean, I can be the trustee, which is the person who takes care of the property, the grantor of the trust, basically the person who sets up the trust, and the beneficiary of the trust, that's simply the person whose benefit the trust is for. So if I set up a trust and I'm the trustee, but I set it up for your benefit, you would be the beneficiary. I'd be the grantor and the trustee. So it's just an arrangement for designating someone else to take care of property on behalf of someone. And that can be, there are different kinds of trusts. There are revocable trusts, meaning they can be changed, terminated at any time. There are irrevocable trusts, testamentary trusts, and those would be a trust that's set up in your will. So the provisions of the trust agreement are set out in the will. It doesn't take effect until after death. Or there's what's called a living trust. So, and that's simply a trust that I would set up during my lifetime. Perhaps the most common now is a revocable living trust. So it can be changed, but I set it up during my lifetime and I can change it, amend it, get rid of it anytime I want to.
Nice. Very nice. One of the big questions we get is with property. I mean, you can't take it with you. You don't have it. There's no hitch on a hearse. And so how dealing with property usually, I think, seems to be the biggest concern. And, one of the questions we had here, let me read this. If you have an example of a sister and a brother inherited mom's house. The brother lives in the house and assumes responsibility for it. What does the sister need to do to turn complete ownership over to the brother? Can she just remove her name from the deed, or does he have to legally buy it from her?
Well, she can either gift it or sell it to the brother, and the way to make that transfer is simply a deed from her to him. So you don't really remove your name from a deed, but you deed your ownership interest. In this case, she would own half to her brother by a warranty deed, or what's called a quitclaim deed.
And there's, you hear about people like gifting money to family members. Is there a limit as to how much can be gifted each year before you have to deal with taxes?
Good question, and the answer is kind of yes and no. There has always been an annual exclusion from gift tax, and that changes with inflation. In 2020, it's $15,000 per year. So I can give up to $15,000 per year to any number of people I want to. They don't have to be relatives, it can be anyone. The $15,000 mark, if it's less than that, I don't have to file a gift tax return. If it's over $15,000, there's still really no tax to pay, but you're required to file a gift tax return. And there would be zero tax due, but it's a matter of filing it. So that's the only difference. So you can still give an unlimited amount. Well, not unlimited, I guess. Let me back up.
Be nice.
Well, it's still a pretty large amount. The estate and gift tax exemption under federal law is $11.6 million. And so as long as you're under that, you're not going to pay any gift tax, or no one's going to. So, it's not very often do we run into that. Occasionally, but not very often.
So is there a difference between a gift and an inheritance?
Well, a gift is simply a transfer that's made during lifetime. Inheritance is made on death. So that's the biggest.
And is there any like a difference between giving cash versus possessions?
No.
And is that per person? 15,000 per person, or just
yes.
Total for the? Oh, no, wow.
Per person per year.
Yeah. And now one of the things nowadays with we're kind of, it seems like going back to that idea of multiple generations living in a home. And is there a way to set up ownership so that, kind of almost like the other question, you can pass on ownership even though you've paid for some of the mortgage and such?
You can gift it. Again, you can give the property to, let's say you're living with a son or daughter, or they're living with you in your home. You could gift that to them. There's also what's called a life estate.
Oh yeah.
And some people have heard of that, but if you look at a piece of property, let's say your house, like a piece of pie, there's two parts to it with this example I'm giving, and that is The life estate, if I have a life estate in a piece of property, I have the right to use it, live there, do whatever I want with the property during my lifetime. And I'm responsible for maintaining it, upkeeping it, paying the taxes. On my death, it goes then to another designated person, and that's called the remainder interest. And so that kicks in after my death, and that's once I make that deed creating the life estate and remainder interest, that can't be changed. And so if I ever wanted to sell the property after that, all I could sell is the right to have that property for as long as I'm living. And so if I died tomorrow, that life estate is over. If I live another 40 years, that life estate is going to continue for 40 years. So it depends on, it's based on my lifetime. But again, no one is going to want to buy my life estate because they don't know how long that's going to last.
They're not quite sure how to bet on you on that.
Right.
What would you most like to tell people about how to prepare for passing on or receiving an inheritance?
Well, the second part, receiving it, I don't know if there's a whole lot that you can prepare for there. Passing it on, I guess making sure that you have everything the way you want to have it, that you have your will the way you want it, that you have life insurance and retirement plan beneficiary designations the way you want it.
Check those beneficiaries every year,
definitely.
right?
And that's something too that when we go back to wills, that's one thing a will can't do. Is if I have a life insurance policy and I name you as the beneficiary, if I have something in my will that gives that life insurance policy to a third person, that's not going to be effective. It's going to be the beneficiary designation that controls. And so that's true with retirement plans, annuities, life insurance policies. The other thing is we can own, and most husbands and wives, especially with their residence, own that as joint tenants with right of survivorship. What that means is that when I die, my wife automatically receives the other half of that property. So she owns half, I own half, but when one of us dies, the other one automatically becomes the 100% owner. And so again, if I had a will that gave that property to a third person, that's not going to be effective. So those things need to be coordinated.
Yeah, I've heard someone has said about like wills and estate taxes was a way of redistributing wealth. And does a will then, or these trusts, help to keep it in the family and create that equity or fairness?
Well, definitely, yes.
Yeah.
And as far as taxes, because the exemption amounts are a lot larger than they used to be. Those have always been indexed by inflation, but like back in the 1970s, the estate tax exemption was only $60,000.
Wow.
So we've come a long ways.
Yeah.
And there's been talk with if there's a new administration, these amounts may go down again. We never know.
What about in your will or trust supporting causes that you have a passion for, whether it be a church or a camp or some sort of ministry or social ministry? Is there a way to designate them?
Oh, very much so. I mean, you just mentioned that in your will, and I guess the one issue there that people should consider is, for example, with Good Shepherd, we have the endowment fund, and if someone wants their gift to the church to be held permanently, then in their will they should name the endowment fund as the beneficiary, as opposed to just Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, which then it can be used for whatever purpose, and that's okay. But some people aren't aware that they have those options.
Right. And that's one thing I know I've run across is when you designate it for a particular use, that ties it up.
It does.
Are you better off just saying use it as you see best?
Depends on whose perspective you're looking at it from.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do say use it for what as you see best. putting trust in their congregational leaders to make the right decisions.
Having sat at council meetings with one whole page that's just all the designated funds that don't have enough to do anything, but nothing can be done because they're designated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anything else? The last question I have here is, how do you make an inheritance a blessing and avoid family strife?
I think probably the best thing to do is to make sure that you know what your wishes are, think about them carefully, and put them in writing and let people know.
Yeah. And is it a good idea to have a good relationship with an attorney, a local attorney, and
Definitely.
and definitely,
and not just attorneys. We used to refer to an estate planning team, and that would be a financial advisor. I mean, I don't sell stocks and bonds or mutual funds, and there's a good reason for that. I practice law,
yeah.
and so an accountant, a financial advisor, an attorney.
Yeah.
And in some cases a trust officer if someone has a trust set up where they have a bank acting as trust officer.
I've heard that myself. Yeah, have that team because they know how to work together, and each one has an expertise to give you,
right,
and stuff. So, any closing comments you would like to make about?
No, I guess
law?
just thanks for the opportunity to. I wish we could be present, but under these circumstances, I think this is going to work out just fine.
Yeah,
so.
Well, we'll have to maybe have you back again next spring. We thought April would be great because that's tax time and all that stuff. People would know kind of what's going on. So maybe we'll have to try this again sometime and expand. But
sure.
Thank you very much, Tim, and look forward to getting together with folks sometime soon.
You're welcome, Julie.
All right, thank you. Take care, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.